This is about us seizing the opportunities which are there to have a future made in Australia. It's one of the big themes that I had in the lead up to the last election. We can be either scared of the future, tread water like we did under the previous decade, or we can seize the opportunities that are there from the transition to net zero. This is a transformation that is happening globally. I sat in the Parliament for day after day, month after month, year after year, where Josh Frydenberg spoke about Liddell and keeping it open when the decision was made to shut Liddell on their watch, when there was no new coal-fired power stations created, and around the country, of course, closure occurred. Without planning for a transition, without planning for what happens next. What we know is that if we seize the opportunities, Australia is positioned better than any country in the world. We have the best solar resources in the world up above us, and they're free. We have some of the best wind resources. We have also the best human resources. Australia has been world leading at innovation. PV solar, created at places like the University of New South Wales, the Australian National University, has seen the breakthroughs that have led the world. But we have not been good at commercialising those opportunities. We've created the innovation and then seen all the value being added offshore. And today we have around about 90% of the world's solar panels produced in just one country, China, and then exported to around the world. We missed the opportunities. We are not going to miss the opportunities of this generation. And that is what our support is about. That's the role of ARENA and the Clean Energy Finance Corporation and other institutions that were created by the former Labor government, that the former government that I replaced sought to abolish year after year. Because we have that in place, because we have a minister with vision in Chris Bowen, and a minister who's absolutely committed to manufacturing here in Australia in Ed Husick, and we have local members like Dan Repicoli who understand what is needed in these local communities. And we're working with state governments. It must be said, we worked with the former state government here in New South Wales as well. It's only Peter Dutton and the Liberals who have a view that somehow this should be a site for a nuclear reactor under their policy. We can have a nuclear reactor in decades' time if you can find anyone who'll finance it, which you can't, which means that nothing happens, as nothing happened for the last decade. Or you can seize the opportunities which are there. We have the highest per capita use of solar panels on roofs of any country in the world. But of all of those, about 1% of them are made in Australia. I know how hard it is. I sought out, as did Minister Bowen, to make sure that the panels on my roof in Marrickville are Australian made. It's difficult. We want to make it easier. And these panels, this technology that SunDrive has developed, is the most efficient in the world. Why wouldn't you take that opportunity and pair it with AGL's vision that they have, with my government's commitment, with the New South Wales government's commitment to manufacture more things here, whether it's solar panels or train carriages or ferries or other goods that are used here in New South Wales, and have a future made right here in Australia. And that's what the $1 billion Sunshot program is about, following on from our $2 billion Hydrogen Head Start program. A vision for Australia that sees renewable energy powering advanced manufacturing here to produce more in Australia. Powered by clean energy, positioning ourselves to be a renewable energy superpower for the world. That's my government's vision. Clean, cheap energy, making more things here, skilling up young Australians and retraining Australians as well for the jobs of the future. And that's why yesterday as well we introduced into the Parliament our Net Zero Authority legislation. Our Net Zero Authority that will work with unions and business and local communities on the transition to make sure that we don't leave people behind, but far from it, that we seize the opportunity for even more jobs which are secure, which are high paid, as part of our commitment to see workers paid more and also to keep more of what they earn through our tax cuts going to every single Australian taxpayer. That's very much my government's vision for our economy going forward. It's a positive vision. It's one which shapes the future in Australia's national interests, not leaves us vulnerable to shocks from international circumstances beyond our control. That's why I applaud the work that Minister Bowen has done in putting together this program, in working with the private sector, in working with agencies to make sure that today's announcement that will see more jobs on this site than were here under the former power stations operations. More jobs, more security, better pay, stronger local economies, stronger regional economic development. That's what my government's about, and this announcement today is, I think, one of the most significant that will be made during our term, and I'm very proud to be a part of it today.
Well, thank you, Prime Minister, and this is a great day for the hunter and a great day for our country. You've heard the Prime Minister say many times he wants a future made in Australia. And today we are making a big step to make that a reality. Not the first step, not the last step, and a very big step. Today we're announcing Solar Sunshot, our new program to support the manufacturing of solar panels, solar cells, solar modules and associated infrastructure here in Australia. We used to have an Australian-made solar panel industry in Sydney. It closed many years ago. It's time to get it back. We've put many millions of solar panels on our roofs over the last few years. We have to put another 60 million on in the next 6 years, and as the Prime Minister said, only 1% of those have been made in Australia. That ends today. So in detail, the Solar Sunshot program is $1 billion of support, very similar to our Hydrogen Head Start program we announced last year. $1 billion of support run through ARENA, our Australian Renewable Energy Agency, providing production credits for people who will make solar manufacturing, solar panels in Australia and associated infrastructure. We'll be progressing that very quickly, and we are very keen to see that support flow this year. Now, I want to give a shout out, of course, to Damien from AGL and Vince from SunDrive for today's announcement. As the Prime Minister said, taking steps today to see more people employed in this just one announcement. There's many more announcements to come for this site, but in just this announcement, more people employed than were employed at the Liddell Power Station. You hear a lot of doom and gloom saying this transition is terrible. Well, it's hard, but there are massive opportunities in it as well. Massive opportunities for the types of people we see standing behind us. I just want to give a shout out to other companies that are here today. To Richard Pedersen from Tindo. The Prime Minister mentioned that both he and I have Tindo solar panels, Australian-made solar panels in our houses. It was hard to do. Tindo held the flame alive during the last decade or so of Australian manufacturing, and they'll also, I know, be very keen to participate in Solar Sunshot. David Griffin from 5B that rolls out solar panels very quickly on mining sites. They'll also be able to participate in the Solar Sunshot program. Both Australian companies that have been manufacturing in Australia, and we want to see them make more things in Australia for longer, as we welcome SunDrive making the most efficient solar panel in the world here on this site. And as Vince said, that's possible because of the announcement that we're making and the announcement that the Minns Labor government is making today as well. So also a shout out to my friend and partner Ed Husick. In 2024, good energy policy is good industry policy. The same thing. And this sort of announcement isn't possible without whole of government efforts and the Industry Minister and the Energy Minister working hand in glove under the leadership of the Prime Minister. And of course, the leadership of the New South Wales Government with the announcement that Courtney is making today of New South Wales Government support for New South Wales solar panel manufacturing, which has enabled Vince and Damien to make the announcement they're making today. So I think Damien and Vince and Courtney and I have been propping up Telstra's profits for the last couple of months with all the phone calls between us bringing today's announcement together. And it's an effort well worth it, because the world's climate emergency is Australia's jobs opportunity, and under the Albanese government it's an opportunity we are seizing, we are grabbing that opportunity. Opportunities come along and they can pass you by. But under this Prime Minister, we grab that opportunity to be a renewable energy superpower, and not just make renewable energy in Australia, but to make the things that make renewable energy in Australia. So it's a proud day, particularly Vince, an idea which started in your back garage, two uni students working together under the leadership of Professor Martin Green, who is a hero for Australian manufacturing. The modern solar panel was invented in Australia at the University of New South Wales and the Australian National University. They are in roofs around the world, but they're not made here. That ends today. We start taking that Australian ingenuity and we make it in Australia, and we make it here on the Liddell site. I want to hand over to my friend Courtney Husos, who will talk about the New South Wales Government's participation in today's announcement, and then I'm sure we'll take questions.
Well, good morning everyone. My name's Courtney Husos and I'm the New South Wales Minister for Domestic Manufacturing and Government Procurement. I am delighted to be here today with the Prime Minister, with Ministers Bowen and Husic, with my parliamentary colleague, Minister Penny Sharp, and also local representatives Dan Repicoli and Emily Saval, and of course the Mayor, who we've been talking about some of the challenges that we're facing in terms of local jobs for quite some time. Today I can announce that the New South Wales Government will develop offtake agreements for solar panel manufacturing. This is a new and innovative way of leveraging our government procurement spend. What we will do is gather together the spending capacity of the New South Wales Government and use it to foster local manufacturing opportunities. We're going to do this as part of the next round of the Net Zero Manufacturing Fund. Now, governments run important grants programs to foster and to support new and emerging businesses. We see this as the next step in ensuring that those businesses continue to grow and prosper and have local jobs right here in New South Wales. We know that every job in manufacturing then creates 3.5 further jobs along the supply chain, and we want more of those jobs here in New South Wales. I was at a recent roundtable with some advanced manufacturers and they told me that New South Wales is the least hospitable place for manufacturing in the country. We are absolutely committed to changing that, and by working with our federal government colleagues, with the Prime Minister, with Ministers Bowen and Husic, yes, we've had a lot of conversations lately about this particular announcement, but this shows when we work together what we can achieve. Countries around the globe are rebuilding their sovereign manufacturing capability, and we want to be able to do that right here in New South Wales. I want to congratulate SunDrive and AGL for this historic announcement right here in New South Wales. We know we have great critical mineral opportunities, but we also have fantastic manufacturing opportunities. And to do it here on this site and to bring all of that together is really exciting to be part of. This is the kind of economic diversification we want to see as we build towards a clean energy future, fostering those local manufacturing opportunities right here in the Hunter. Thanks so much. We're happy to take your questions.
Yes.
Prime Minister.
I'm conscious of the Australians of the Year will criticise us if we don't do that, so thank you. Yeah, happy to take questions.
Prime Minister, will Australian-made solar panels be cheaper than the ones made in China? And if not, how can you be sure that Australians will buy them?
These are the most efficient solar panels in the world. These are good products. They will last for longer. They will be commercially available, and we are very confident that Australians will have Australian panels on their roofs. This technology that's been developed and I might ask if you want to add to this, Vince. This technology is the best in the world. We've missed out in the past, and that's a tragedy. When we think about Australia, we should be so proud that of so many, everything from the black box to Wi-Fi to solar panels, we have been innovative. From time to time, we've been effective at value adding. But too many times we've just let those opportunities go past. When you have the best product, most efficient in the world, for something that will grow in demand, then we are very, very confident, as well as using the procurement policies of government, using the power of government purchasing as well. And we have a Made in Australia policy as well in our national government, that you can use government to, if you like, provide comfort of that base going forward. And then go out, not just to Australia, but I see opportunities from this Sunshot program to export to the world as well, of the range of products that we have and energy that we can produce here in Australia as well. With new technology, one of the things that is happening, and why I'm confident about the broader issue of a future made in Australia, without getting too philosophical about it, with new technology and advanced manufacturing techniques, the proportion of labour in the costs of production has been reducing over a long period of time. So in the 1970s and 1980s, when we saw Australian manufacturing depart Australia, it was about labour costs. Because transport is a higher proportion of the costs of production, particularly for domestic use, and labour costs are far less, then the competitive nature changes between Australia and developing countries. And that's why this announcement today of a future made in Australia, and one of the reasons why Ed is here as well as the person who's looking after the National Reconstruction Fund, we see this certainly, as Chris said, not the beginning but not the end either. We see a future made in Australia as being a centrepiece of our budget in May. This is, if you like, a bit of a sneak peek into what will be rolling out over the next year and in the years to come. This is a big difference between us and our political opponents, who don't think that Australia's up to it effectively, who've abandoned manufacturing. We had a debate this week about cars. They told the car industry to leave. That had consequences for Australian jobs and Australia's economy. We think we can do it. I think this bloke is one of the people who's doing it.
So, thank you, Prime Minister. Just to add a few comments onto the Prime Minister's response. So the world is changing, but so is manufacturing costs. Over a decade ago, solar manufacturing costs were dominated by labour, by land, and by equipment capex. Whereas today, due to the rapid advances in productivity, manufacturing costs today are more dominated by fundamental costs. So things like material input, electricity input, and as the Prime Minister mentioned, transportation. And Australia has a very unique advantage in each one of those three aspects. So from a material point of view, Australia is in the top 3 global reserves of every major mineral that is needed to make a solar panel that no other country can say. From an electricity point of view, there is a clear trend towards decarbonising supply chains. So what that means is solar panels also need to be made using green electricity. And so if you look at the world through a net zero lens, a lot of the heavy industries and manufacturing, including the manufacturing of solar panels, need to shift away from countries where fossil fuel electricity is cheap, such as in Asia, to countries where clean electricity is cheap. And in that world, Australia wins hands down. And then the third aspect, transportation. If you're in Australia and you buy a solar panel, about 15% of the cost is just to get it to Australia. And if we have onshoring of all the components that are needed to go into a solar panel, then obviously you save on the transportation costs. So yeah, I thought I'd just add a few comments there.
Prime Minister, today's announcement is all about making more solar panels. How will the government address the growing demand for recycling at the end of their life?
That is something that Tanya Plibersek is leading work on the circular economy. We see there again huge opportunities for Australia in advancing through the circular economy. As Vince just said, one of the things that the world is going to be looking at, and one of the reasons why net zero isn't negotiable, it's necessary, is that global markets will look at the nature of production. They'll also look at those issues as well, which is why we'll have more to say on the circular economy in the coming period, both in the lead up to the budget and beyond.
Prime Minister, are there any risks in relying on China's supply of solar panels that the government's trying to protect? Will Australia follow the US in imposing tariffs on Chinese solar goods?
No, well, that's not our objective here. But our objective is to be more resilient. We know that in today's world, one of the things that is happening is that nation states are looking at their sovereign capacity, their ability to be resilient and to not be vulnerable to shocks. Now, there could be 3 shocks can occur at least in the future. One, we went through recently, the pandemic. The science tells us that there might be something else that disrupted our trade. It disrupted our way of life. The second is cyber issues, which can be disruptive as well. And the third is either trade impediments, a conflict, either economic or defence conflict as well. So we want to make sure that we have a more resilient economy. That's one of the lessons of the pandemic, is that we need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. And that's why when we talk about manufacturing, it won't just be this. We have been speaking about manufacturing pharmaceuticals. We've been speaking about manufacturing in so many different ways. You'll see some more work that we're doing on batteries and other areas as well. We need to make our economy more resilient.
Prime Minister, is there a timeline, a goal sort of set to improve on that 1% Australian-made figure?
Yes, quickly. I mean, the plans here, I know Vince has got plans for 2026. We want to see solar Sunshot up and running well and truly this calendar year, and we intend to do that. Now, of course, it takes a bit of time to build a factory and get the workers in and get all the infrastructure going, but we are going at lightning speed.
Prime Minister, well, I think everyone here locally agrees this is a great announcement for the Upper Hunter. 500 workers at the moment, you can't find a property to rent, or if it's to buy, it goes off the market within 24 hours. Here, not only in Muswellbrook, but for the whole region. What can you do, what are you doing to ensure that doesn't become an issue for Vince and his team, which is already an issue for other e-technologies that are establishing here in this region?
Well, we have 17 different housing measures worth more than $25 billion. Just this week, to give an example, our Housing Australia Future Fund, which asked for submissions, is massively oversubscribed. That was something that was held up, voted against by the Coalition and held up by the Greens Party over a year. We want to get on with it. We have programs of our Social Housing Accelerator. We have programs of Build to Rent. Our tax incentive that we put in the budget last year as one of the centrepieces for investment essentially in private rentals was something that I spoke with Dr. Kennedy, the head of Treasury, just yesterday, was indicating his view that that had been very successful already at driving that investment. So we had a decade of neglect when it came to housing issues, but we're getting on with support for housing. We have our Help to Buy scheme in the Parliament at the moment. That's a shared equity scheme to support people to buy their own home. So we're working, including with the New South Wales Government on these issues. Part of it is planning laws. I think the New South Wales Government showing the way to the nation, in Chris Minns showing leadership about the need to develop planning laws and to make sure that we cut through. I know that local government is very keen on that happening as well. So we want more people to be able to buy their own home. We want more people, more private rentals to be built, and we want more social and affordable housing built as well. We have programs for each of those in order to increase supply. There's no shortcut here. You've got to increase supply of housing, and we're determined to do so.
Prime Minister, obviously we're in a region that provides quite a chunk of money to state and federal governments for our coal mines. Do you see down the track that programs like Sunshot and other programs that you have in the works for renewables could fill that big gap of money that will be left when we have no coal mines?
Well, the coal mines and other resource industries have been very important for this region and very important for our national economy, and they continue to play a role. But we need to acknowledge that in today's changing world, as the world transitions to net zero, the nature of our economies will change as well. What I see is programs like this announcement today as making sure that communities don't get left behind. And the Net Zero Authority will be tasked with working with the private sector, working with the unions to make sure that that occurs, to make sure that the transition happens in the interests of regions, that communities are brought with us on the journey of change that occurs. You can't stop change. What you can do is shape it. My government's determined to do that, and we've worked very effectively with the union movement, including unions here in the Hunter, and I notice there's a few unions represented here, and that's a great thing. And we've worked as well with business and with the local community, including the local mayor. When I was in Muswellbrook just about a few months ago at the hub that's here in the Donald Horn building, what you see there is innovation here in Muswellbrook. I was somewhat stunned. I'm the first Prime Minister to visit Muswellbrook, they told me, which is pretty extraordinary. I'm back because I care about the regions. The regions are best positioned, let me just say this very clearly, from the transition in our economy, the big winners will be regions and outer suburbs, because that's where manufacturing can be based. That's where you can have the sort of facility that you have here, where you'll have solar panels manufactured with the assistance of other solar panels and renewable energy as well. You have that green production. So whether it's that or green steel in Whyalla, green aluminium in central Queensland, we face a really bright future if we seize it.
Right, in relation to the Net Zero Authority, do you know how many people it will employ, and when are you going to announce the replacement for Greg Combay, who's going to step down at the end of his term?
Greg Combay will be stepping down at the end of this financial year. We go through our processes of proper scrutiny in appointing a replacement, and when those processes are completed in a diligent way, the announcement will take place. The Net Zero Authority will be pretty streamlined in terms of staff, but one of the things it will do, it's aimed at doing, is leveraging the capacity of existing people who are, whether they're working at the local council, whether they be local unions, whether they be local businesses as well. Part of what we're seeking to do here is to have, if you like, a one-stop shop to coordinate that activity to make sure that people aren't left behind.
How transferable do you think the skills are to keep these communities thriving into the new industries, some that we may not have thought of yet?
I think they're very transferable. I think Chris might want to add to this. But today we've got behind us, fitters and turners, and we have electricians, apprentices. We're going to need, Chris will have the figure, how many electricians we'll need over the next decade. They are transferable skills. They are good, secure jobs. We have specific programs like our new energy apprenticeships program to encourage people to go down into these industries. But they'll be secure, well-paid jobs. The people standing behind us will never be out of work because what they're doing is training for the jobs of today and the future.
Yeah, thanks, PM. The jobs opportunity is massive. We need 32,000 new Sparkies between now and 2030. Just one example. And then you can add in many other types of jobs as well. We need more people for this massive transformation. If you look at even just today's announcement, SunDrive will be employing PhDs down to school leavers who will get their skills on the job in manufacturing and be trained up. And I think this is a massive opportunity. People who are good at making energy traditionally are also good at making energy in a renewable economy, and we want to see future generations get those skills and fill those gaps. So it's a good problem to have, to need so many new employees for this massive transformation. As the PM said, the regions are and will be at the centre of it.
Minister Sharp, sitting
Sure.
up here, very close by. We're all talking about transition and moving to a new economy. When's the heritage? What's happened with the heritage listing of Ravenswood Homestead?
We are no. While you've got me, it's totally fine. Look, obviously the Heritage Council's made a recommendation to me. I'm currently looking at that, and I would hope that I'll be making a decision in due course.
When? Because you've had it for 2 or 3 months now.
Yes, and the decision will be made in due course.
Minister, there's an analysis out today that suggests that keeping the Rowan power station going past next year could cost between $120 and $150 million. Can you give us an update about where your discussions with Origin are at?
Yeah, well, I think people will be unsurprised to know that I'm not going to be talking about the details of those discussions. Those discussions are underway. They're the subject of some pretty strict confidentiality requirements, and we'll be dealing with those. The discussions are productive, and as soon as we're able to provide more information, we will.
Prime Minister, there have been calls for you to return to Alice Springs following this week's rioting. When will you be back there?
What I do is I make announcements when I'm going. I have visited the Northern Territory 9 times. 9 times.
Are you planning another trip?
I have visited the Northern Territory 9 times, and I visit around Australia very regularly.
How many of those times were Alice Springs?
I have been to Alice Springs, I've been to Katherine, I've been to remote communities where I was last week.
How many times have you been to Alice
Yulara,
Springs?
I've been to Darwin, I've been to a range of communities in the Northern Territory. We are continuing to monitor what is happening there. We have a $250 million program in Alice Springs. Just last week, I was in the Northern Territory at remote communities, the first Prime Minister to visit the council at Katherine. I met with the entire Northern Land Council in Katherine last week as well. We continue to engage. My minister, Linda Burney, was in Alice Springs at the beginning of last week. She has visited on multiple occasions, as has of course the local member, Marion Scrimgeour. All Australians will be concerned by the scenes that we have seen. There has been a temporary curfew put there in Alice Springs. That is a sensible move and one that the federal government supports.
Are you considering calling in defence?
What, sorry?
Should the APF be brought in as the coalition suggestion?
Look, when I've met with people in Alice Springs, including the police, they haven't called for that. What they know is that people who are on the ground locally are in the best position to determine what is necessary. Yep. Right.
On
Done?
detainee,
Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Tariffs was mentioned earlier in China. How close are we to the tariffs on our local wine industry from being removed and that market being opened up again?
No, I don't want to spoil the next the next visit, which is to a winery with the member for Hunter, Dan Repicoli. So, if you come along there, that I'm sure you will get an invite to. It's just in a short while. I'll be speaking about the wine industry there at Brokenwood here in the Hunter. The Hunter Valley has great opportunities. What we know is that the wine industry, in terms of its exports to China, were worth over $1 billion annually. The impediments to our trade with China was worth more than $20 billion annually. What that is, that's about Australian jobs. And my government has been patient, deliberate and calibrated about our engagement with China. I've said we will cooperate where we can, we'll disagree where we must, but we'll engage in our national interest. And I very much welcomed the visit of Wang Yi to Australia a couple of weeks ago, as I will welcome the visit of Premier Li to Australia for our annual leaders' talks that will take place later this year. The interim decision on wine has been handed down. The decision is imminent about the next step in that, and I'll have more to say about that in a short period of time.
Prime Minister, on the detainee legislation, was it a mistake trying to get that through Parliament without giving others enough time to scrutinise it?
Well, everyone had time to scrutinise it. There was a full briefing given to the Coalition. The Coalition voted for the policy in the House of Representatives on Tuesday, and they voted about the politics of the issue with the Greens Party on Wednesday, after they received not just a full briefing but received what they requested, which was an estimates hearing on Tuesday evening. This is closing a loophole which is there in the legislation, one that was there under the former government. To be very clear, this isn't about refugees. This is about people who have not been shown to have any right to be in Australia, be it refugees or be it family reunion status or anything or any other measures. And I found it astonishing that the Coalition had three policies. They were for it on Tuesday, they were against it on Wednesday morning and deferred it, and then said maybe Parliament should come back to vote for something that they had just voted against voting for. So I think it's up to them to explain why they had three positions over the last 2 days. Yesterday was the last sitting day before the budget. My government is orderly. My government rolls out policies in an orderly way consistent with what our program was that we were elected to implement in 2022. Today's policy is the latest example of that.
Prime
Next,
Minister,
last one.
What's your biggest fear, Dan Repicoli lining you up for one of his burger challenges, or South Sydney continuing not to win in the game?
Oh.
We can mark a good question. I'd like to finish it on a happy note.
I think we'll be going now.
I think I thank Pat Conroy for lining up that question. Look, Good Friday tomorrow. Easter is a time when bunnies should do well. And so I am very hopeful of a good outcome, notwithstanding the fact that Canterbury is actually in my electorate of Grainler. So I'll be cautious about being too harsh against the doggies, who I do have a soft spot for. But Dan Repicoli, I think, has made such a big impact as a local member here. He is someone who is just a champion for this area, and there is no way that I would compete with Dan in two areas. One, shooting, where he has Commonwealth Games medals and where he's hoping to represent Australia at the Olympics coming up. And the second is eating. I just reckon you've got to know and not try and punch above your weight. And his weight is considerably more than mine. Thanks very much.